I would like to be able to share Hello everyone, we are now live. I'm just posting this into the group, one of the groups. How is everyone doing tonight? As usual, the phone line will be open for anybody who wants to call, text, and share their story. And you can also comment in the chat. Sorry, I am extremely tired. I'll explain. Well, I'm not really going to explain why, because it's kind of a secret project thing that I'm working on. But I will. Connection is unstable. I think I unplugged Google. It's probably what's doing it. I'll be right back. Okay, well, I've unplugged Google, so hopefully that'll help. And in case you're new here, you do not have this unstable, and I'm not sure why. See, the call line is open. So if any of you guys are free, feel free to do so. And like I said, if anyone leaves any comments, my hair looks terrible tonight for some reason. I have no idea why. It's been doing this all winter where it's like I just washed it and it still doesn't look like it. It's getting on my nerves. I expect stuff like this in the summer, but my hair was actually drier in the summer. And for some reason in the winter, it seems to be more oily, which doesn't make sense. So it's really bothering me right now. So if anyone asks any questions, I will stop to try to answer those questions to the best of my ability. But otherwise, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Becoming Warrior series. Right now, and it is going to be a series. I know right now I only have one video up, and that's just the first video. I plan on uploading another one this week. I just have to get it recorded, and I've got a title for the next two videos that I'm trying to decide what order I want to do those in, and then I'll need to figure out exactly what it is that I want to say, and to try to say in the most comprehensive way that I can in a 10-minute time span, because I don't want them to be very long videos. I want them time into looking into what it's saying and get something out of it, no matter how short of the video they watch. Like, I just want the whole thing to be helpful and not a lot of rambling. Whereas on these lives, I do a lot of rambling, but I'm trying to make the actual videos that I post not like that, if that makes sense. Again, rambling. But Well, one of the reasons why I'm probably tired is because for the last 2 days I've been um, helping out a little bit on a friend of mine's uh, group project that he's in. It's a film group. So I've been helping out on the film set there the last couple of days. I did a half a day both days, but I'll be doing that again this Sunday. Um, so it'll just be one day this weekend, but I'm gonna go for the whole day. I plan to anyway. So instead of 2 half days, I'm gonna go for the whole day Sunday. And so besides that, I've also been working on my own film project with the other film group that we are in, or that I am in, that I know this friend from. And so that's what I've been working on, is working on that and talking about the writing with the creator. So I've been focused on a lot of film stuff lately, as well as coming up with ideas not just for this YouTube channel, but for the other two channels that I try to be active on, which the one, well, both of them are much less active than this one. The entertainment therapy one or whatever was kind of, it started to pick up there for a minute, but I just really haven't had time to get back to it. And also, it's just a lot easier to record the games that I want to play if they're on the laptop. And most of the games that I have and would want to play, a lot more difficult to record and edit and post them. Whereas if I do it from the laptop, I pretty much, only thing I have to do is compress the file size, and most of the time I don't even have to do that, and then upload it. Um, and like I said, I've just been really busy with school and film. With school, I had one bad day this past week because I was doing so many other things, and there was so much going on. And I was being very productive. And then 5:30 in the afternoon, and I'm like, schoolwork to do. I didn't realize it, so I rushed home. Probably got here about 6:30, and I ran in here, and I was like, and looked it up, and I'm like, I do have an assignment tonight. And then I looked again, and I was like, I have 2 assignments due tonight. So yeah, that was really bad. Um, and I ended up having a mild caffeine overdose because I just was like, and throwing like dark chocolate into my body, um, and just getting really wired, and so I could fly through it, which I successfully flew through it, and I got 100% on both assignments, thankfully. But it was, oh man, it was a horrible night. I pretty much didn't sleep the rest of the night. I tossed and turned, had nightmares, and just felt awful. It actually got so bad at one point that I had thought about going to the hospital because I thought, okay, is this just a mild overdose where I will wake up and feel better? Or is this a little bit more than that where I need to go get checked and get something to combat this? Um, at one point, but then I ended up throwing up, and it wasn't as bad after that, but it was still very bad. But yeah, it was horrible. But pretty much other than that, everything's been going pretty good lately. Um, I have been doing yoga consistently every single morning for over 2 weeks now. So I've gotten that back on schedule. I know we're supposed to be talking about the series, but I'm getting up to that. We usually do this for about an hour, and part of it is just doing general updates and talking to you guys, which I hope it's as helpful to y'all as it is to me. Um, so pretty much, yeah, schoolwork and uh, yeah, yoga for like 2 weeks in the morning. I have in the last 10 days been doing it at night too, but I haven't been as consistent with that. But as of the last 4 days, I have been consistent with it. I haven't had a break from it in 4 days, and I am trying to be strict and going to make myself do it, which kinda leads into the part that I can't talk about because I'm also doing some other exercises and stuff, but I can't really share it because it's kind of a secret project and everything, but, you know, if and when I am successful with what it is I'm trying to accomplish, I will share it and let you guys know about it. Um, but it's mostly just for a personal thing. It wasn't even anything that I planned on sharing at all. So it's really just a personal thing for me because I'm physically disabled and I've pretty much been this way since I was 17, 18 years old when I was in the Marine Corps. And that led it was it's kinda like I was injured and no one would hire me because of my injuries. And so I got on disability. And then that just led to like for one, that threw me into poverty. So I was coming from a middle class family and then just fell into poverty, moved out with, the father of my children. And that really, like, I entered into a very dark period of my life. Like, I thought I had had some dark times, mentally and mood wise when I was a teenager, but it was nothing like this. It was, my life has been physically awful since then, to where I kept getting several injuries. I kept getting sick. Thankfully, my immune system seems to be doing very well ever since I quit smoking a few years ago. Um, it's actually been 2.5 years now, I think. Um, and so I have my immune system has really done well. And I think part of it is quitting smoking. But I think the other part of it is just me believing that I have a good immune system now, believe it or not. And also letting go of the baggage of like resentment and unforgiveness, bitterness, self pity. I think going through all of that and unloading that has been able, it's like it's made my immune system stronger, where instead of it being repressed, and also too, it's like if you're sick all the time, then your immune system is weaker because it's constantly fighting. And so it never gets to like really like replenish and rebuild. It's like it's always at a high trying to fight something. And when it's like that, then it's vulnerable for more things to come in. And when you're stressed, your body feels like it's under attack. And so it's stays in this high, stress, high. I don't want to say high immune system because that sounds weird, but like high white blood count, I guess you could say, or something. It's not necessarily high white blood count, but it's like they are feeling like they have to attack something. And usually they end up attacking the actual body of the host, you. And that makes you feel even worse because your immune system has turned against you. And it's because you've created all of this stress in your body with all of the emotional baggage that you're holding on to. Um, which I've noticed for me, yoga has been helping me to release a lot of that. Where I've had times where I'll break down and cry. Sometimes it's a happy cry, sometimes it's a good cry. And then there's sometimes it's like you don't know what it is, but you just feel lighter all of a sudden. It's like you feel something release from a certain muscle in your body, and an emotion usually follows that, but not always. I've had it just happen where it's like the only emotion I had, like the only emotional response I had to it was feeling the release of whatever it was. And so I'm really glad that I've been able to get back into that and stay consistent with it. Um, so we're more or less caught up on what's going on in life. I feel like this is bothering me. So we're going to talk about the Becoming the Warrior series. I am trying to do these in a particular order, but I'm also pretty sure that just you looking at any one individually on its own would be beneficial to you. Um, but I'm also, like I said, trying to put it in order. And you could probably do it in different orders if you wanted to, but I'm putting it in the order that I feel like makes the most sense and is the most successful as far as the stages that you need to go through in order to become your own warrior. Which the first one we had was healing the inner child, and I can talk a little bit about that if you guys like. Um, because we always have an inner child. And one thing to remember, that I don't know if this will coincide, or if you guys will see this as coinciding, but for me and my beliefs, it does. That there is no such thing as time. That's something that we made, and that actually everything is happening now. And what that means is your past is actually happening now, as well as your future. Like, we only label things as past or future, but it's really all happening now. And so, if you think about that, then that means there's always a version of you that is a child. Um, and so that's just like scientifically speaking, or whatever, with parallel universes, which, not trying to get too much into that, but technically we are moving through parallel realities and universes on a daily basis. Um, and pretty much it's just something that's so expansive that is probably not really worth trying to look into and figure out, but it is something that has always intrigued me personally, especially as someone who's always wanted to time travel, which I used to be one of those people that was like, I want to time travel to the past to fix the past. And from the scientific studies, it's looking like that wouldn't be possible, that you can't travel to the past, but you can travel to the future. Um, or at least if you did travel to the past, whereas we used to have this idea that if you travel to the past, a paradox could happen where it's like, oh, you stepped on a butterfly or whatever, and the apocalypse happened, that something catastrophic would happen if you go and you even changed one thing. Um, but it's actually more like, if you go into the past, if you even could, which I believe we should be able to, because everything is actually happening now. But whatever, time travel is weird. But it's like, if you go into the past, you won't change the past. You would actually just be going or creating another parallel reality, and then be going into the future of that reality. So you wouldn't actually be changing the past. That past is set in stone already. It's already happened. Um, but the thing is there's several versions of that same reality where things happen differently. And so that's why it's a little bit confusing as far as the time travel, because it's like, no, you can't go and change the past, but maybe you could jump parallel realities. Um, this is like way out there stuff. I'm so sorry. um, but they have concluded that going into the future is quite plausible. It's just like, once you go to the future, you won't be able to come back. And now, like, probably in the last couple years of my life, I've gotten to where I'm a person who, I don't really care that much about trying to go into the past and change it, especially because, I don't know, like, for me, if it wasn't for the past, then I wouldn't be the person that I am today. It's like, we like to romanticize the idea that, oh, well, somehow, I would have been able to be this person sooner if this, and this, and this would have happened. But the thing is all those things happened to you to make you who you are. And on some level, you agreed to go through these things so that because in some way they're actually benefiting your purpose in life. And at least, like I said, that's my own belief system about it and the things that I like to study about. So I really wouldn't want to change the past, especially because really, as far as historical pasts, I could really care less about changing that. I mean, maybe there's someone out there who is, feels like they're noble enough to be like, oh, I would go back and stop World War II from happening. But I'm not really that person. If I did want to change the past, it would be purely for selfish reasons to go back and like prevent my children being taken from me. And I'm more than willing to admit that. And so, but as far as something that would be beneficial to myself as well as everyone else, I feel like it would be more beneficial for me to go into the future and, just to get to see like where things end up going and finding out about future technologies and stuff, like the cure for different diseases that we have now that are considered to be incurable. Um, and if there was a way maybe to bring that back to the present, like I said, if that was an option, if I could go either forwards or backwards, I would go forwards and then bring whatever future technology there is and bring it to this time. Um, as far as if I was trying to do something for the world, um, which we kind of got off topic there. But so, just some titles for the next part of the series. I'm not sure how long this series is going to be. This is the wrong phone. Um, I'm not sure how long the series will actually be, but pretty much until I feel like that we've actually covered everything. That's how we got on that topic, healing the inner child, because a part of you somewhere out there is always a child. Um, yeah, and it's kind of like too, if you think about in psychology terms, like a lot of these different studies and beliefs and everything kind of mesh together in a way where they all link and fit together like pieces of a puzzle. And in psychology, you have what is called the superego. Hold on, let me get here. Superego, which is your moral. It's your moral code. It's your morality. It's the entity that is like the ultimate good, basically. And then you have down here, you have the id, which is impulsive, selfish, survival, and like childlike and everything. And then here in the middle, you have the ego, which is you, the person who's trying to balance out these things. You're trying to satisfy the id while also living up to the high moral standing of the superego. Um, which for some people who have CPTSD, like we talk about with healing the inner child, your superego has been hijacked and has become the inner critic. And which your superego is kind of a critic, but it's supposed to be a constructive criticism. But because of the abuse that you went through in childhood, whether you know you were abused or not, some people don't remember their childhood, which to me is a sign. Then, if you don't remember your childhood, it's a sign that you were abused as a child. Um, and then other people, it's like they were so brainwashed that they don't even realize that what they went through was not normal. and it's just been completely normalized, and they've not yet been awakened to the fact that their upbringing was not normal and was not okay. And so there's some people walking around that who don't even know that they were abused as a child, and who actually have like some forms of this complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And basically what that is your inner critic, your inner voice has been hijacked, and it's telling you all these things that are not helping you, that are not productive, which that's what I talked about in healing the inner child, is that you, the adult you, the you now, you have to step in and protect that inner child, you, from the inner critic. So you have to be the parent and the child here. And you have to be the parent that your parents weren't for you. And you need to step in and stop the inner critic. Which for different people, this can mean different things. It could mean actually confronting the inner critic and, like, say, trying to use logic. Thing is of mind to play the what if until you run out of what ifs, which if you're someone like me, that takes a very long time for you to run out. And also the problem is with me is that that doesn't work very well for me, because I can take what if to a very extreme level. Like usually mine will end in me dying. It's like, well, what if? Well, what if? Well, but then I'll be homeless, I'll be robbed, I'll be beaten to death. It's like I end up catastrophizing it if I try to play the what if game. Um, but pretty much what the idea behind that is you play the what if game, and then when you ran out of what ifs, then you're kind of like, okay, so what? Okay, so if all that happens, so what? You know, like I said, in my case, that doesn't work very well. So, and also for me, confronting the inner critic, at least in the beginning stages when I was still focusing on healing, and especially healing the inner child and trying to silence the inner critic, confronting the inner critic did not work for me, because for me, the only thing it did was antagonize the inner critic and make it become even more hostile, um, verbally violent, and uh, what's the word I'm trying to find? Disparaging? Is that what I'm looking for? Alexa, what's the definition of disparaging?
The adjective disparaging is usually defined as that disparages, tending to belittle or bring reproach upon.
Yeah. Okay, so that was right. I thought it was, but I was, for some reason, it didn't sound right when I said it, so I had to check. So, yeah, it actually made it much worse, to where it's almost like, like the inner child is here, and then I'm trying to step in as the parent, and the inner critic is here, and it's like I confront it, and so it's like it beats me down, to where it's like I'm now the inner child who is being abused by this inner critic. And so that didn't work for me. So for me, what I had to do is, instead of confronting it, I had to create like a new voice, I guess you could say, and like actually be that voice. And so it's kind of like, instead of facing the critic, it's like I face the child, and it's like I would pretty much like this person, this thing, this voice is saying over here. It's like I would combat it and and tell the child, you are loved, you are worthy of loved, and that I am here for you, you are safe. nothing that happened was your fault, just all those things that a child should hear. And then, of course, I imagined myself as their own parents. Like I did a whole exercise that Richard Grannon had on his channel for this, where I visualized, separately, and together, I think at some points, my parents telling me different things that, you know, that I guess I would want to hear, especially from my dad, because he's never been very good at emotional support. And I don't know if it's just because he's awkward like that or like why that was, but he was the more critical parent when I was a child. And so there was a lot with that where it's like I had to go through and do these exercises and be like, reimagine them differently. And, more so with my mom, it was more so, I'm trying to think of how to put it, but more so just her reassuring me because me and her are both codependents. And so there's been times in our life that our relationship has been kind of entangled in some ways where it's like both of us are kind of like, we're not really sure if this is okay or not, because we are very close, but it's like we want to have a healthy, close relationship where it's like we're not so dependent on each other, but that, we can be close and be together and share that same bond while both of us go through life as happy and whole individuals. And so that was pretty much the only thing I did with my mom was, visualizing her telling me, it's okay. It's okay that you grew up. It's okay that, you want to go off and have these adventures. It's okay for you to do things, apart from me or whatever, and because even though it's like we've kind of just naturally done that, as I've gotten older and as she's gotten older, we've kind of naturally become stronger individuals. It's like this was like nothing that had ever actually been spoken, and so that's pretty much all I did. Is it's like because I had felt where we both were becoming more so individuals rather than this cluster of you can't tell one person apart from the other, like everything just depended so much on the other person. And it's like, we had become more so like individuals, which was a very emotionally hard process for both of us. And so it's like I had felt that, and in some ways it's like, I felt like it was healthy, but then because I'm also very codependent, it's like I just gave myself that reassurance as her that yes, this is healthy and this is okay, but that, I'm always going to be here for you, and we don't always have to maintain the same type of relationship for you to know that I love you, and that she would love me no matter where I was, if I was in the same town or not, Um, so yeah, so that was some things that I did to help with healing the inner child. But naturally, um, if it is too triggering, I don't really want to say that word because it's such a memeable word, but causes you to have too much of emotional flashback, then my suggestion would be either you yourself be the parent and imagine yourself as being the child with the you version now talking to you, the child, and receiving this love from yourself, or like what Richard Grandin suggested was talking, like creating your own parents in your mind, like the image in your head of what the perfect parent would be or whatever, and imagine that they were your parent and they were telling you these things, because, for some of us, it might be too hard to even think about our parents, which means what that means is that you are in a continual emotional flashback. If there's some things or topics that you can't even talk to deal with the emotional flashback, we have to start by healing the inner child. So another thing that is helpful, which I'm actually highly emotionally literate, trying to say that right. But even I found the exercises from Richard Grannon's Instagram helpful, which is kind of like where you start out with one emotion, where you're like, okay, what emotion can I identify? Well, there's several different emotions within the spectrum of sad, but that's like your basic primary emotion. And so then you're like, okay, when I think about this, I feel this way. It's still saying my connection is unstable. I don't understand why. I don't think I have. Wait a minute. Tablet. Tablet, where's tablet? Tablet has vanished. Hold on. I think the tablet is still on Wi-Fi. It is. Hold on. I think that must be why it's doing it. Plus, it is raining, so that's probably not helping. Okay, I turned the Wi-Fi off of it. So basically, it's like for example, with me, with one of my exes, it's like whenever I think about this person, I want to be careful with my words, but I become very angry. So that's the basic emotion. Okay, so that's the one you start with, is what is the base level emotion? I feel angry. I feel fear. And I feel, what was the other one I put? I can't remember if it was sadness or embarrassment, but I do remember mostly, because the other one was kind of like, yeah, if I had to put a third one, that would be it. But it was mostly like, I feel angry and I feel fear, that whenever I think about this person, I get very afraid. And like, it's like, you can feel your heart start to race, or you feel pressure build up, or you feel your throat tighten, or your chest expand, because it feels like you just feel like you can't breathe all of a sudden. And it's like it's almost like what I imagine is the walls closing in on me, and like I'm being shoved down into this very tiny black box, and that everything is getting darker and darker around me. That's how I was feeling at the time earlier this year when I was doing these exercises from Richard Grannon and his emotional literacy program. So that's how I felt. That was the level of fear that I felt. It was very strong. And I mean, this was like, I think, I want to say August, when I was still feeling this way. And then the other part was just very angry. So that's like the basic emotions. Mind you, I have a whole range of definition of emotions I can give you, but you start out with the basis. And so then from angry, you pick another level in the spectrum. And you can go online and Google all the levels of the spectrums. Like, they'll give you different wheels with different words describing the exact emotion in each category. Which I had actually did at one point when I was with that person, because I was dissociated to the point that I felt like I was on an alien planet. That is how dissociated I had gotten. It's like things were just so bad and I so didn't want to be here, that my consciousness decided to disconnect from my body entirely. For one, I was having a lot of health issues, but then two, this person basically imprisoned my body. And so it was like, so then my consciousness is like, well, my body can't leave, but I can. and but then that made it very hard for me to function in the physical world because it felt very not real. And I'm like, I started, that would cause me to have more anxiety. And it's like with the heart problems I was having, I didn't need any more anxiety. And so it's like, you know, I had looked into some of those emotional things because I'm like, no, no, we're going to feel what we feel. Okay. That I know what we feel is very uncomfortable. It's very bad, but we have to feel it, that we can't just disconnect to the point that, even physical touch is altered in a serious way. Which thankfully that lasted very briefly, and I eventually returned back normal. And now this year, that has been my goal this whole entire year, is just feel more, be more involved with the physical world, actually be here, be present, both mentally, which is a lot harder to be here mentally than physically. Um, which is what led me to doing yoga, because I noticed that meditation didn't help me. It actually could make me feel floaty, which I've mentioned that before. It could sometimes aggravate the dissociative nature I have. And so exercising and doing yoga and stuff, that helped me. But to start with, I mainly just started being allowing myself to feel my feelings, which I'm still trying to get control of, because I'm still not used to feeling my emotions all the time, especially well, I want to say especially negative ones, but pretty much the whole first half of the year. There was probably about a month where I felt super happy this first half of the year, but for most of the part, it was like I was numb. I couldn't get happy about anything. It's like, okay, well, there's nothing bad happening, so I'm okay. But it's like I wasn't passionate or happy or driven, none of those things. And I was worried that I had damaged myself so much emotionally, because there's actually a part of your brain which is responsible for you feeling feelings, which is also linked to memory. Um, and I want to say it's the hypothalamus or hippocampus. I'm not sure. I get those two confused. Let's see, what is the hypothalamus responsible for? Because I mix those up all the time. So I don't think it's the hypothalamus. I think it's the hippocampus. I want to say I'm almost, yeah, hypothalamus and hippocampus. That's the correct way to say that. I'm sorry. It's been a long time since I've looked this stuff up. So yeah, hippocampus is the structure of the brain embedded deep in the temporal lobe of each cerebral cortex. It is an important part of the limbic system, cortical region that regulates motivation, emotion, learning, and memory. So yeah, your emotions and your memory are very much so linked together. That was the other thing with dissociating a lot. I was having a harder time remembering stuff and pretty much just kind of being foggy all the time. And pretty much the first, like I said, there was about a month and a half maybe break when me and my boyfriend Alex first got together. Well, like I went to PAX, so that was like 2 weeks or so before we got together. So it started then. I started feeling better, I thought. And then me and Alex got together. So for about a month after that, I felt pretty good and happy. And then I just kind of started not feeling anything. It's like, well, I don't feel bad, but I know I should be happy and I'm not happy. And I kind of feel bad now for not feeling happy. So I was having a lot of that. And then it seems like in the last half of this year, my emotions started coming back, but they started coming back all the negative ones. Which was a little bit at the beginning of the year too. It's like anytime I would feel an emotion, it was a severely negative one. And it was like it's very hard to be comfortable with that, with having all negative emotions and no positive emotions, especially when it's like, you should be having positive emotions, but you're not. So I had actually thought I had damaged my hippocampus to the point that I was never going to feel happiness ever again and was never going to be able to feel normal emotions again. Which, by the way, same thing happens to drug addicts. Drug addicts who become dependent on substances to feel things. When they quit those substances, their brain chemistry is not the same as a normal person's brain chemistry, and it can take them several years before they start developing normal emotions again, which is one reason why drug dependency or substance dependency is very difficult to overcome, especially for people who started at a young age. Um, so, similarly, being in codependent relationships, being in abusive relationships, it causes similar brain damage as drug abuse does. And so I was very concerned that I was not going to feel normal again. And I was doing all this stuff, doing everything I know I'm supposed to be doing. Like I've mentioned before, I studied psychology for years. Um, Starting out, well, I knew when I was 12 that I wanted to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist. But it was when I was like 14 or 15, I started getting psychology books and medical books and just reading everything that I could on the subjects. And then I was in college and studied it formally in college. But mostly I've studied on my own, either from other psychologists in the field, books they have written, and also the DSM-5, which is the diagnostic tool that psychiatrists and psychologists use to diagnose people. It has certain requirements for each diagnosis that you have to meet, um, in order to be diagnosed with certain conditions. Um, so, yeah. So, even with knowing all that, though, actually experiencing it myself was much more concerning. Um, Especially too because it was like, well, I know that it can take years and years and years for people who have been addicted to drugs, which I never was, but I was in abusive relationships and toxic relationships, which affect the brain in a similar way, because it's triggering the same chemicals in your brain that drugs do. That's all that drugs do, by the way. They just unlock the chemicals that you already have in your brain and in your body. That's the only thing that they do. It's just they unlock it in a very unhealthy way where it's kind of like, you have so much supply of this certain chemical that say supposed to last you over a day or over a week or whatever. And instead it goes, we have all of this in this nice little bucket here or this basket here. It's pretty full, why don't we wee and it like, dumps it out and you can imagine like a basket full of like the bouncy ball cage or whatever where you got all the ball pit. You imagine a ball pit and someone just dumping it upside down and that's all of your feel good chemicals dropping in. And for different people, that's why different people prefer different drugs is for different people you'll get more of one effect than another. Like some people get a more serotonin addiction, and other people get a dopamine addiction. And then, adrenaline is a part of that too. And when you're in a toxic relationship, your adrenaline is being, pumped. You're in a fight. And so your adrenaline is like, oh, and then you go through a cooling down period where you're coming down from the adrenaline rush. And sometimes you don't even get to have a cooling down period. Sometimes it's just immediately like adrenaline, 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 fight, fight, fight or flight, fight or flight. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh no, come here. Everything is fine. We're good. Life is wonderful. And you're immediately then like put into like the dopamine and then, oxytocin release, to where you have then all of these feel good feelings of, yes, happiness, love, everything's good, you know, and you go through these extremes, which then causes you to become addicted to those types of relationships, even if you know that they're not healthy for you. Your brain chemistry, you turn yourself into a drug addict basically, because your brain will be used to your chemicals acting in such a way, with high levels of adrenaline, followed by a high levels of oxytocin, and dopamine, all this stuff, where it's not in a healthy and balanced way. And so then when you remove the substance, the person, the toxic relationship, your toxic codependent behaviors, and you remove that, then you're left over here with nothing to trigger those chemicals to release, because they were controlling your emotions. They were triggering your emotions. Um, that's why it's a good thing to remember after going through a toxic relationship breakup like that, for a long time afterwards, if you're still feeling bad, you can almost, it's a good way to look at it, is that that person wants you to feel that way. They are still controlling your emotions. And so they're not there to trigger those emotions. They're not there to trigger the adrenaline, to trigger the dopamine, to trigger your oxytocin levels and everything. And so you're here on your own. And so things don't feel the same for a very long time. So I think that's why I went through that period of being numb, besides the fact that I was coming out of severe dissociative, what am I trying to say? An extreme dissociative period of my life, which was in the relationship that I had last year, which was, very, very heavy. And I'm starting to get better since I've done the emotional literacy stuff with, okay, I think about this person, I get very angry. Most of my exes, I don't feel that way about anymore. Briefly, I did feel that way about my kid's father, where I went through a time where it was like, after missing and missing and missing and missing him, for who knows why, because at the time it was not like we have a good relationship now, as far as friends and as far as people who have, who had such a beautiful thing, our kids, and, have both had to suffer the loss of that. Um, so we're good friends now. But for a very long time, we could not talk to each other without things would eventually just explode, and one of us would get extremely angry. Usually him first, but it's like my anger was just like underneath the surface, and all it took was for him to spark, and I would like just explode with just this rage where it was like, I cannot talk to this person anymore because it is bad for my health and it is bad for my soul. You should not hate a person this much. Um, which yeah. So, but thankfully, um, I we went no contact for like a year, and he's went through some transformative stuff to where now we can at least talk. And he actually came and made an amends with me and apologized. Like he actually owned responsibility for everything. Like he didn't even do the thing that he would do sometimes where it's like, well, you were wrong for did. And it's like, okay, yeah, well, I've admitted my part several times. And he actually admitted the things that he did wrong and even went beyond that and took responsibility for the things that I didn't do right. Notice I worded that differently, but we'll disregard that. And so he actually took my responsibility too. And it's like, him doing that, it's like, okay, yeah, maybe you have actually changed. Um, but like I said, we're just friends. We're not, and we don't even talk that often, but it's just we're able to talk now, and I'm not, it's more like, yes, there's this understanding of we experienced this together. You are now aware of the pain that you caused me, and I have now forgiven you and acknowledged that you're a pained and wounded person yourself, which was why you hurt me the way that you did. And let's forgive and forget and move on. And really, the only thing that matters is we have these two beautiful children together, and that we're friends supporting each other's growth as individuals. But then we're also, I don't want to say necessarily the only person, but pretty much just him and my mom are the only two people who can even imagine what it is that I'm going through with losing my kids. Him as their dad, which they had a different relationship with him than they did with me. So there are still differences because no one else is their mom. And then with my mom, their grandmother, who is a different relationship too, but she was still very intimate and very close with them. And so those are really the only people who I can talk to about this. And it's like we all share that commonality of that we understand, that we know, like we don't even have to say it or explain, do you know how painful it is? It's just understood. And so, now our relationship is actually beneficial. I cannot say that will ever be the case for most of my exes, but specifically the one that I'm still resolving these anger issues with. And like I said, they have died down quite a bit. Um, but they're still there. The biggest problem for me is the anxiety. And so that's kind of like what I did, where it's like, okay, I think about this person, I get extremely angry. I feel fear. And then it's like the next emotion down from that, it's like hostility. Like what specific anger am I feeling? And it's like, okay, well, it's not just anger, it's hostility. Like my anger reaches a level to where I feel very hostile towards that person. And, it doesn't mean I would ever act on that. Like, of course I wouldn't. But it's to that level of that wrong place, wrong time, wrong day. And there's no telling what could happen because that is there. But pretty much 99.99999% of the time in a normal world that we live in, nothing is going to happen. But it's just the emotion is a hostile, violent emotion that overtakes me when I think about this person. But it's not nearly as strong as the fear emotion. And it's like, so what's the fear emotion? What are some other words I can use to describe that? And it's, anxiety. Yes. Okay. Feeling trapped. I think I actually have the book right here where I could actually read this to you guys. Hold on. I've got it right here. I could tell you the exact. This is the book that I use for all of my spiritual growth. Okay, so now that's what it was. The base emotion was anxiety and vengeful. I forgot there's two different angry type ones. There's angry and then there's vengeful. I put down anxiety, vengeful, and shame. That every time I think about this particular X that I feel. And so it's like shame, it's like what are the words that I am really feeling that's connected to that shame? And it's you can go on Richard Grannon's Instagram page and you'll find that where you click on the one and it'll take you to other pages. You know how Instagram it's got a slide where you can swipe through more pictures. So it's like you click on vengeful and you go down and it shows other emotions used to describe this word. So like shame, I had foolish, cheated, and sadness because there is very mildly some sadness there. And I know that it's not because of the loss of that person, but it's the loss of the like I guess the loss of the dream where it's like I had always and a loss of a part of myself, like the part of myself that was naive and foolish enough to have not seen through him when we were, because I'd known this person a very long time before we ever dated. And it's like I didn't know them. Knew a I only knew the facade, and it's like after you actually get in a relationship with the person, then you actually get to know them. It's like, oh, which I found that out very quickly, but not quick enough to avoid it, unfortunately. Um, it's like now I've learned more than ever, listen to yourself, It's like you were aware of it. You were so aware of it, and then you fell into it anyway and got yourself trapped to where you physically could not separate yourself from the person because you were in fear of your life. So yeah, and then vengeful was the other main emotion, and the emotions connected that was hostile, bitter, and rage. And then the third one was anxiety, and the emotions connected to the anxiety was fear, feeling unprepared, and despair. So like the feeling unprepared, that's really described how I felt whenever I would think about this person. And the reason why I'm sharing this with you guys is because this is something you should be doing for your own personal things. And it don't have to be a person, it could be a situation, where it's like, whenever I think about, crossing over this bridge at this particular place, I get very bad feelings. What are those feelings? Name 3 of the feelings that you feel when you're crossing that bridge that makes you feel bad. And, you describe that. And you can also work it the other way for positive emotions too. And, but feeling unprepared, that really described why I was feeling that anxiety because it's like I thought about that person And the thought about being back in that same situation with that person, or just physically being around them, like, that's what was so terrifying. It's like I would hear their voice on something, and it's like I would just immediately feel like I had been sucked back and was like a prisoner in my own body and was like, "Oh my God," like, "No, not them, no." And it's the feeling of, and it is a feeling of being unprepared. It's like that means I still feel vulnerable. I still feel like I am unprepared about how to deal with that particular situation where I forced to be in that uncomfortable situation again. So then the next thing that you do is you write down saying, for example, I feel anxiety and that's okay. I feel fear and that's okay. I feel unprepared and that's okay. I feel despair and that's okay. And then, you could either do this as a group, like that's what I did. I, wrote each one. And then as a group, I said this next part. But if you want to, you could do this individually, like I feel anxiety and that's okay. And then say, thank you for serving me. You are always welcomed in my house, body, mind, etc. Um, and then, releasing it. That it's like, but I am going to choose a new way to feel. Um, so yeah, but it's because I think that it's the emotions that we resist the most that persist the longest and the hardest. And so I feel like that's why that exercise was so helpful to me, is because it's like I accepted the emotions and I told the emotions, myself, my brain, my emotions, that it's okay that you feel this way. You are accepted. You serve a purpose. You served a purpose, and that it's okay that I feel this way and that I'm open to experiencing any emotion, positive or negative. And that really helped. But there's a lot of other things that's helped me too, but at the end of this year, and it's finally the last 3 months, I want to say, because for most of the part, I have been dealing with all negative emotions, even though my life has been a lot better. I will say at the end of August, or was it September, something like that, August or September, I changed my degree program from game design, which I had been in, almost, well, the whole year I'd been in it. And I switched to uh, film, or digital cinematography at Full Sail. And it, since then, it's like I've come alive and I've mostly had positive emotions. But what's crazy, what's crazy is now that I've had those, like, super high, super motivated, super powerful, positive emotions, I have also had some very seriously negative emotions that came up with that. And I had started doing yoga at the same time too. And it's like it's just been this whole thing of cycling through it. So that's what I've been doing all year. It's just focusing on getting back in touch with my body and my emotions, and, developing that part of the brain. By the way, one of the things, if you have a similar issue with dissociation or memory, either or, um, because the hippocampus is like a shrinking or a shrunken hippocampus has been associated with dementia and Alzheimer's. And one of the things that actually helps that, it helps your hippocampus to keep from shrinking, but also to expand if it has shrunken, is exercising, running. I think cardio, especially. So, like running, getting your heart rate up. You want to be doing something that's getting your heart rate up. And doing that, I guess it's because maybe it increases blood flow to that area, so it helps it to expand. And so if you are having that problem, I know it's like, well, how am I supposed to exercise when I don't feel motivated to exercise, and I can't motivate myself to exercise because I can't feel my feelings, and I'm unmotivated and unpassionate and dispassionate, impassionate. I'm not really sure how you would say that, but the opposite of passionate. Um, and it's pretty much like this: just start moving, and it's really hard, but it's really simple. It seems like the hardest things in our life are often the simplest things. You start moving, and the more you move, the more momentum builds up. That's why it's momentum. But you can't have momentum sitting still, because if you're sitting still, your momentum is also sitting still. But if you just start moving, then the momentum will slowly start turning, and then it's like, the faster and faster that momentum goes, then it's harder to stop that momentum as well. But getting it started is very hard. It's like, imagine pushing a boulder up a hill. And so it's like it may feel like that, but I promise you, it's a very small hill. It looks and feels bigger than what it is, but it's actually a very small hill. And once you push past that resistance, that part of you that's trying to stop you from improving yourself and stop you from putting the work in to do this, and is trying to make you think it's so hard when it's not that hard. Once you actually get it done, you push it up to the top of that hill, and then it'll take off down the other side. And and then sometimes you end up coming across another hill, and it's like it only makes it partway up the hill, and then you have to force it a little bit again. But each time you do that, it gets easier and easier. And it's like everyone is saying this. So, people are probably tired of hearing it. The reason why everyone is saying it is because it actually does work. So, anyway, we're like at an hour and 15 minutes. But that's kind of like me. I might rename this when I upload it, when I get offline and upload it, because I mostly was focusing on an extended version of healing the inner child. So that's pretty much what this was. We did discuss a little bit what my plans are for um, the I was about to say something totally different, but Becoming the Warrior series. Um, but it's kind of hard to talk about the whole series because I don't want to give it away until I get at least a couple of videos out. And if I can get a couple more videos out, like once we've had 3 out, then I feel more, and we've discussed them all in depth, then I feel more comfortable with actually sharing what I plan on following that. Um, so yeah, pretty much that's going to be it. So we discussed healing the inner child, different ways you can do that, what all that entails. And again, feel free to look up Richard Grannon on Instagram and go through his emotional literacy section. It's like at the very beginning, I think, of his Instagram posts. If it's still there, I'm pretty sure it is still there and it's completely free. If not, you could always play back what I said and go on Google and look up base emotions and find you a list of base emotions, and then look up those emotions on your own on Google individually for, more emotions that, or more words to describe vengeful or whatever. And so, yeah. But anyway, that's going to be it for me. I hope that you guys found this to be helpful. But yeah, that's one reason why I'm extremely tired, is because I've just been working a lot on school stuff and film stuff and my own personal film stuff, and also the exercising. I've started some new stuff in the last few days. And so today is my rest day. I'm doing one on, one off, but I'm still doing the yoga morning and night every day. But as far as the other exercise stuff, I'm doing that every other day. And today's my rest day, and I still feel extremely tired. I actually felt better yesterday when I did the workout and did all those things than I have today, which is supposed to be my rest day or recovery day. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and you found it helpful. And I will see you next week. But I'll probably see you in a video. I'm uploading a video this week. But as far as actually talking to you guys, I'll see you next week. Bye.